Hey there, my growers and friends. Welcome to another installment of Mornings with Greg. Today, what we're going to be talking about, continuing on with that whole conversation about container gardening. Today, we're going to be talking about fertilizers and how they work in the garden. So, as always, I appreciate you for being here because you could be anywhere in the world, but you're choosing to be here with me, and I greatly appreciate you. And as I do every episode, I'm going to first take a sip of my drink. Today, guess what? It's not coffee. Today I'm actually drinking some hibiscus tea. I'm going to take a sip of my tea and we'll get going. That's good. So, first and foremost, can everyone hear me? I'm going without my microphone today because I noticed with the last video, the audio quality wasn't the best when I reposted it. So now I'm going completely micless. Can you guys hear me okay? Give me a wave. Let me know that you can hear me because, of course, while I'm filming this live, I can't tell whether or not you guys can hear me okay. Okay, there we go. Thank you, our best Life Vista. Appreciate that. Cooling winds. Good to see you, my friend. All right, so today we're going to be diving into a little subject on fertilizers because I believe there's a lot of misinformation on fertilizers. And, I want to make sure to clear the muddy water for you on how fertilizers work and how they work on your plants, because I know that there's kind of this misnomer that more equals better, right? Not when it comes to fertilizers. No, you can actually detrimentally, just really devastate your plants and your ecosystem by using too many fertilizers. So that's what I want to delve in today. Audio quality is great. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. But before we move forward, I want to let you know that this episode is being brought to you today by Thryve Roots Citrus. Yes, Thryve Roots Citrus. I'm actually going to be using a little bit of Thryve Roots on this container garden that I have right over here, because as you can see, I have multiple citrus trees. So first, I want to tell you what Thryve Roots is. Thryve Roots is an OMRI listed soil amendment and root booster that uses what's already available in your plants. It is not a fertilizer. So if you're wondering, hey, Gray, can I use this product along with my fertilizers? You totally can. What this allows you to do, it allows you to have more access to those fertilizers in question. So you can totally use this in conjunction with your fertilizers. You actually all you do is add this to your normal watering cycle. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and water a little bit of my citrus right now. Now, since these plants are outdoors, what I'm going to be doing is mixing in, 60 milliliters. So that's the equivalent of about 4 tablespoons to my gallon of water here. Here's my watering pail. Mix in 30 because my measuring cup only goes to 30. And then I'm going to mix in another 30. And boom, that's our 60 right there. And I just want to tell you, this product smells amazing. I love it because it's actually made from essential oils from plants. That's why this will not hurt your fertilizing schedule, because this is actually already accessing what's already available in your plants. You're just enhancing its ability to be able to use it. So let's go on a little walk. And now typically in this situation, I would try to add my Thryve Roots first, so that when I'm pouring in my water, it actually mixes it up pretty good, because you do want to mix this concoction. But for today's sake, I didn't think about that beforehand. I didn't want to go have to run grab some water while I'm trying to show you guys how I'm going to be using my Thryve Citrus. And the plants that I'm using, again, remember I told you, you don't have to have a massive garden to grow all of these things. This is all my container garden right here. This is my Myers lemon. So all I'm going to do is I can just pour some of that Thryve Citrus right there in my Myers lemon. And I love my Myers lemon because the Myers lemon is actually a hybrid. It's a hybrid between a Eureka lemon and a mandarin orange. And with that being said, here is my Page mandarin orange right here. And there we go. Now, granted, I have other trees too. I have my blood orange over here. Let me see if I can show you guys. have my blood orange right here that was really getting chewed up by some caterpillars that was going through here. But since I have a praying mantis, it has since taken care of all of those caterpillars that was chewing up my blood orange. But I love the blood orange because it has this big, big, big foliage right here. And so when I'm not on a live with you guys, typically, knocked over my Pakistani Mandarin. I wish that was a drink. Pakistani mulberry. And now typically when I'm not in a live with you guys, this is what I'm doing on my Saturday mornings. I always come out nice early in the morning so that I'm not getting that harsh sun causing a lot of evaporation when I'm doing my water. And now granted, I still have another tree to go, but I do want to spend some time talking with you guys about fertilizers. Now, first and foremost, you know I'm here in an educational capacity. So if you have any questions along the way, make sure to let me know and I'll address them as they come up. But fertilizers. And now I want to tell you the reason why this came up is because it was a question last week and I didn't get to it in last week's episode because someone was asking about using cow manure in our containers, right? Can we use it? Well, short answer is yes. You can use your manures, your cow manure, rabbit manure, your alpaca. That's actually a good one too. You can use chicken. Back when I used to have my birds, I used to have a lot of chickens. Let's see. Hold on, we got a question here. Chicken manure, I used to use a lot of it. How long do you keep your citrus in containers? For me, it's pretty much going to be indefinite. Reason being is because I'm in Dallas. I'm in North Texas, and while we don't have a long winter, we have a cold winter. I think the coldest since I've been living here in Texas that it ever got was during our snowpocalypse of 2020, when we, had like a week-long snow, and it got like 5 degrees. Now, that's an anomaly. We don't usually get those often out here in Dallas. On average, when we're in our cold spell, like around mid-January to February, it'll get down to 10, maybe 15 degrees. But with that being said, most of my citrus will not survive that. Like for instance, that blood orange that I was just talking about over there, that blood orange can't handle anything less than 40 degrees. So she's coming inside in my plant room or over yonder going into my greenhouse. So to answer your question, I pretty much keep them in containers their full life. Now, yes, if I had the environment and the growing apparatus to let them to grow fully out in my yard, I would love it. But this is why we container grow, right? We container plant and container garden because we don't have those ideal conditions or those at ideal space to be able to grow in other means. Hope that answers your question. But I do have, now with that being said, I'm going off on a tangent, and you guys know I easily do that. That's why when I was an educator, my students used to love me because they know they can get me on a tangent real quick. I do have my Page Mandarin. My Page Mandarin orange back there is a cold tolerant citrus that can go about maybe 20 degrees or so. It can handle up to 20 degrees, even a little bit of frost. But because this is the second season I've had with the Page Mandarin, I'm one of those guys that I like to test things out and see exactly how much it can truly tolerate. So I still keep it in a container for right now. Now, I do constantly pot up. And that's another question that we had last week, too. Knowing when to pot up, knowing when to transplant those plants and trees into bigger pots. So I will pot them up, but for right now, they're just going to stay in containers. Like even my moringa over here. Can you guys see that? That's one there, and there's a second one. My moringa is massive. But I keep them in containers because of my growing situation. Now, I was speaking with a young lady earlier this week who grows moringa out in right outside of San Antonio, Texas. And what she told me she does, she actually grows them as an annual tree. So she grows them throughout the season, then she chops them down. And I don't know if you guys recall, but that's something an idea I flirted with a while back. But I think next season I will totally do that with another set of moringa because I'm not losing these two girls. So when I get some more seeds, I think I'm going to try them as an annual and see what I can do. But good question, but I digress. So let's talk about fertilizers, right? There is a plethora. I mean, there is a whole industry built off fertilizer. I mean, honestly, when it comes to fertilizing your garden, I can't tell you the exact dollar amount, but let's just say that it's $1 billion industry. So I get a lot of questions like, Gray, this plant is doing this, or what should I fertilize with that? First, and I'm not going to bore you too much with too much of the science, but I'm a science nerd. I love the science. We have to talk about, and I took notes, we have to talk about the access to fertilizers. But let's say, hey, what are our fertilizers, okay? Now, we're talking about our fertilizers, and yes, I'm a former educator, so I took notes to actually discuss with you guys today. All right, so we got to talk about our NPK, right? That's going to be our nitrogen. Nitrogen is like where the building block of a lot of our proteins come from. It's going to produce a lot of your leafy greens, your foliage, and so forth. So nitrogen is totally important when it comes to development of your plant. Another thing about nitrogen, it's highly mobile in your soil. What does that mean, Gray? Essentially, you can fertilize your plant with some nitrogen. Let's say we're using like a fish emulsion or something like that. And after 2 or 3 waterings, your soil actually might be lacking nitrogen. Because one, the plant has uptakes, you've lost some through evaporation, and then your natural watering. As you water, that water is passing through your plants, and of course we know going through our drainage holes, or if we're out in a raised bed situation, it's going down into your watershed. It's very, and like I said, I'm not going to bore you too much with the science of it, but when it comes to that, those ions of nitrogen, it actually is, it moves very quickly. And so with that being said, you can easily lose nitrogen in your plants. Next, we have our P in our NPK, right? That's going to be our phosphorus. Now, phosphorus is very important for your critical energy transfer of plants, root development, and your flowering, fruiting stage. A lot of times when people ask me, hey, Gray, I have this plant, like for instance, let's say a tomato or something like that, right? This tomato right here. This tomato looks horrible, by the way. Like, Gray, you have plants that actually look bad? Yes, I do. Like I've told a lot of people when they say, oh, Gray, you're awesome. You can grow amazing things. No, the only difference between me and you is maybe I've killed more plants than you. But this tomato is just looking pathetic. And this is part of the reason right here. She's root bound. She needs to be potted up. But I digress. So we're talking about our flowering plants. As we can see here, we don't see any kind of flowering going on here. 1, because it's root bound. 2, because it probably is a lack of phosphorus in there. And yes, should I fertilize this plant? Yes. But only after I've moved it to a bigger container so that it can uptake those nutrients. And we'll talk about nutrient uptake in just a moment. But again, if you have questions, in the meantime, just go ahead and shoot them across the screen. So when we're talking about our flowering stage, phosphorus is definitely something that I might recommend to a grower if I know the whole picture, the whole story, right? Because I don't like to just blanket statement, hey, if this is going wrong, do this. No, I need to know the whole picture. I need to know where you're growing, how you're growing, and what has been your initial steps for this plant until you got to this stage. Because that allows me to truly paint a full picture for you. So yes, phosphorus is for our flowering stage. Next, we have our potassium. When it comes to potassium, I'm going to tell you right now, most of you guys who follow me know that I'm not going to tell you about anything about banana water. Banana water is a myth. It actually can hurt your garden. So potassium regulates your water uptake, your enzyme activation, and your overall plant vigor and disease resistance. So potassium is a very important one. But going back to mobility, right? Because I think I left something out. Nitrogen, very volatile, very active in your soil. Phosphorus, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, let's say this is nitrogen. Nitrogen is doing this. Your potassium is right there. Potassium's not going anywhere. Once you put some potassium, a potassium fertilizer in your soil, you're good. Have you ever looked at the numbers on, like, do I have any fertilizer around? No, I don't. Have you ever looked at the numbers for your NPK when you're talking about your fertilizers? It'll have like a 6, 2, 1. Well, that 2 in the middle, that 6, that's your nitrogen. That 2, that's your phosphorus. And let's not say a 1, let's say a 623 or 624, right? And then that third number, that's your potassium. Reason being is because that phosphorus, that number in the middle, it's not really going anywhere. So what can happen when we're fertilizing and we don't know how these fertilizers move in our soil, you could end up totally putting in too much potassium in your soil. And if you're adding too much potassium, it has the exact opposite. The plant won't be able to take up those nutrients, and you have a whole like zinc deficiency going on in your plants. And you're like, well, why are my leaves turning yellow? Well, now because you have such an abundance of potassium, the plant can't take it. It's like it's too much. It's overload. It's overdosing. And we have a question here from Miss Kitty 1. Good to see you, my friend. I have a tomato plant that is on my patio with no buds. How can I get the nutrients in there naturally without store-bought fertilizer? It's in a small pot, and I have to check it, see if it's root bound. Well, yes, Miss Kitty 1, that goes back to exactly what I was saying. It's all about the surface area and the ability to uptake nutrients. All right, now I'm going to go on with the rest of the macronutrients and so forth, but let's address this question. If it's in a small container, tomatoes, generally speaking, if we're talking about your, what variety? If we're talking about your determinate tomatoes, that's your bush style tomatoes, they need at least, we're talking about at least 5, maybe even 10 gallon container. They need a lot of surface area because those roots really like to travel. And the more surface area you have for those roots, the better they can take up your fertilizers. Because truth be told, your soil probably already has the fertilizer it needs in it, because most of your store-bought bag soils are going to have some hints, some inklings of fertilizer in them. Not to mention if you're adding things like cow manure or earthworm castings and so forth. So with that being said, first, let's go ahead and move up to a bigger pot. That's what you want to do first and foremost. Give it more surface area, more room to work with. Then we look and see how the plant adjusts to that new environment. Of course, make sure we're giving it hydration, make sure we're giving it water, and then go from there before we just start throwing a fertilizer in there. Because if you're putting fertilizer in a container that's too small, it still might not be able to take up those nutrients. And then plus, all it's going to do is exacerbate the situation with the root binding, because remember that NPK, when we're talking about our root development, we're talking about that phosphorus, it's going to want to try to develop more roots. Make sense? We have another good question. We got the questions firing today. All right, let's see. Sweet Mama Clater, good to see you, my friend. All right, let's see. All right, and Ro Quincy says, apologies, I just came in, but what's wrong with banana water? You really should watch the podcast with myself, Andre the Farmer, and Derek the Chocolate Botanist, because we talk about this in great detail. But really quick to answer your question, what's wrong with banana water? Banana water, the peels that you're fermenting in water, you are not extracting potassium from that. What you're doing is you're fermenting organic matter in a water solution, and that is creating harmful bacteria. It can lead to root rot situations, and plus you're putting harmful bacteria in your water. Now, the funny thing is, like I said, we've talked about this several times, is that if we did banana water correctly and we actually made a true tea out of it, it could work. And there was a young man, I can't tell you exactly the name of his channel, but he did just that. He took banana peels, he chopped them up, he placed them in water, he added a complex sugar to it, like molasses or like kelp. He aerated the solution, and he made a tea. That's where banana water comes from, a compost tea. You can make a tea out of it perfectly fine. But one, you have to feed the microbes, because that's what you're trying to get when you're trying to get a compost tea. You have to feed the microbes by adding a complex sugar. And I'm not talking about your white sugar. I'm sorry, that's my daughter. She just woke up. I always do these in the morning when my kids are still asleep. But you're feeding the microbes, the microorganisms. That's where we're trying to get our benefits from, because those microorganisms are helping your plant uptake nutrients. So we're feeding the microorganisms, and then we are aerating. We're creating an air-rich environment, because again, those microbes, those good protozoa, they need that air-rich environment. So if you're just taking a jar, putting your banana peels and your water in there, It's not doing that. You have to have those complex sugars. You have to have that aeration, because that anaerobic environment, meaning lack of air, lack of oxygen, will create harmful bacteria. That's where they thrive. So like I said, if you want more information, definitely go check out the Dirt on Gardening podcast, and me, Andre, myself, Andre, and Chocolate Botanist, because we go over that in great detail. Again, I know where the banana water myth comes from. Is just the steps to go about. It's like Killmonger, right? If we think about the movie Black Panther, I understand Killmonger, not necessarily disagreeing with Killmonger, but it's just his approach was wrong. So that's how I feel about banana water. It's the approach is wrong. Let's do it the correct way, and it can actually benefit your plants. But one thing I'm going to say, it's very, very small amounts of potassium in banana peels. A banana in itself, a whole banana, we're talking about the pulp and from the rooter to the tutor, only has about 7% potassium in it. The peel itself is 80% water. That's why I always recommend, if you're going to use banana peels, sure, use them as a compost. Chop them up, throw them in some soil, compost them, and you're good. All right, and we have more questions here. All right, so how do I make a phosphorus fertilizer from home? That's a very good question. And now this question comes from Laurel X. There's a way to be able to do it. And essentially, again, this is something my buddy, the Chocolate Botanist, discussed. You can take and create your own bone meal. But it's a little bit labor intensive. And now, Derek the Chocolate Botanist, if you don't follow him, go and check him out. He actually has the steps on how to do this. But essentially what you would do is very quick version. And of course, this is not the 100% steps, but you essentially can bake down bones to create a powder to create your own bone meal. Or, here's a thought, you can just go to your local garden center and get some bone meal. Bone meal is not that expensive, and a lot of your garden centers, a lot of your nurseries, they'll have bone meal already mass produced, and bone meal is a great way to get phosphorus. But yeah, so if you want the full breakdown on that, DM my buddy and tell him I sent you, Derek the Chocolate Botanist, and ask him, his steps on making his own homemade phosphorus, and he will definitely share that with you, because that's how we are. Waymanism, good to see you, good to see you. Morning, everybody. All right, and we're still answering the questions. Cooling Wind said, would blending the peels make the potassium more readily available and to use it in compost as a compost work? Yeah, so that's what I was just talking about, Cooling Winds. Thank you, my friend. See, you already hip the game. Yeah, you could try blending it up, because the smaller those particles are, whenever we're talking about any kind of composting, the smaller you can make it. For instance, let's talk about like our leaves, right? We talk about putting leaves and foliage in compost. Dried leaves are great, just like your banana peels. They can be good as an organic matter source as far as your greens are concerned for your organic matter. But it needs to be crumbled up. It needs to be broken down, because if those leaves are not broken down, they can actually pull nitrogen away from your plants, because as the microorganisms are trying to decompose this matter, they're actually working harder and actually pulling nitrogen away as opposed to giving it. So yes, grinding up and chopping up your organic matter can make it a lot more readily available. I don't even know if that works as far as subject noun agreement, but it can make it more available for your plants to actually be beneficial. Good point. Thank you, my friend, Cooling Winds. Same for rice water, Ro Quincy says. Yep, rice water. I mean, if you're boiling some rice and you just happen to have some leftover water and you want to throw it out there, I mean, you can use it, but I mean, the amount of nutrients in it is so minute, it's really not that beneficial. Rice water necessarily wouldn't be, because you're not fermenting the rice water, right? This is just water, excess water from when you boiled some rice, right? If you're not fermenting it, I don't see any problems with it. But I mean, it's just the amounts of nutrients that you're getting are so small. I mean, honestly, you could put regular tap water, rainwater, and probably get the same effect. Good questions. All right. So, Sweet Mama Clater says, I always use banana peels, tea leaves, oat flour, and cinnamon. Is that a good mix? Well, it depends on how we're using it. Are you talking about in your compost? All right, thanks for the info. Appreciate you guys. Just checking the questions here. All right, Miss Kitty 1 has another question. It says, do all plants need phosphorus? Because I'm going to get some bone meal and sprinkle that on every single little plant I have. Well, that's a very good point, Miss Kitty 1. Miss Kitty 1. Research your plants, guys. Look up your plants. I mean, I always say to use your resources, right? Your local ag extension can tell you specifically what every plant that you grow in your environment, they will tell you that for free. So let's say, for instance, I'm here in Texas, and in Texas, my local ag extension is going to be Texas A&M. The website specifically is Texas Texas AgriLife. And I go into that website and I say, hey, tomatoes, do I need to add phosphorus? Or I just look in their search means, and it can tell you how much of that fertilizer each individual plant needs. Now, while every plant may need phosphorus, what's going to be more important, and we didn't even get to get in this today, is going to be the soil pH. Because temperature, soil pH, soil conditions, that's what's going to make those nutrients, those macronutrients that we talked about, that's what's going to make it more accessible for the plant. Because if you have improper soil pH, let's say you have a soil that's like around, let's say it's more neutral, like around a 7, right? If you're putting that phosphorus in there, your plant's not going to be able to take it up. It needs to be a little bit more acidic, because that's going to create the vehicle for the plants to be able to take up those nutrients. So that's your first steps. And you know, guys, I always lead with soil. Soil is so much important. Understand that soil. Understand how that plant is available in that root system. Let's go ahead and break this open. Understand how that root system is going to work in that soil before we start just throwing potassium in there. Because, for instance, I'm going to tell you right now, blueberries, Miss Kitty 1, say you have some blueberries. You really don't want to fertilize blueberries. Honestly, the way it grows, it's going to pull everything it needs from the soils, as long as we have a soil pH of about 5.5. That's what's going to be the key factor there. I do not fertilize my blueberries at all. I mean, well, now I won't say at all, because I am a fan of slow release fertilizers. So I may add in a little bit of compost when I'm first planting. I may add in a little bit of earthworm castings. But when we're talking about compost and earthworm castings, the amount of fertilizer in there is so small, and it works slowly over time. So I may add those in at the beginning, but the main focus for me is going to be that acidity in the soil, because I know that's vital. Everything else it needs, it'll get from itself. And you can actually hurt your blueberry plant if you're adding too many fertilizers, like I was saying before. So good question. So don't just start sprinkling bone meal on everything. First, look up those plants and see what they require first. And of course, you know, guys, as always, you can always DM me and tell me the specific plant you're looking for, and I'll do that research for you guys. Because a lot of people always ask me, like, hey, Gray, how do you know so much? How did you get so smart? I learned this in the United States Army. Drill sergeant told me this. I'm not going to tell you how long ago, but a long time ago. You don't have to know everything, but you do need to know how to find your information. You need to be able to check credible sources and do your research. So a lot of the times when you guys are asking me questions, it's not that I just have this in a data bank. I mean, some things I just do naturally store, right? But I research and look up the answers, and then I fact check those answers, and then I share that information with you. So you can always DM me, you can always ask me your questions, and I'll help you out, because I'm all about helping you learn how to grow. Let's see, we've got a bunch of questions. Okay, Waymanism says, if you want to use your rice water instead of throwing it away, if you can't necessarily use it on your plants, I would put it in a spray bottle and dilute it a little bit, and I would use it as a facial toner. Keep in the fridge and use it within a few weeks. Facial toner. I don't know anything about facial toners. I appreciate that information. I guess, and I understand your logic, Waymanism. Now, granted, I have not fact-checked any of this, and I'm not doubting or discrediting anything that Waymanism is saying, but I understand the logic, because there are high levels of starch in the water that comes off of your rice, because let's face it, you know, your rice is a starch, so when you're cooking it, and I'm not going to say that back in the 90s when I was trying to have my jeans all nice starch pressed and everything, because, you know, we used to do that in the 90s. I'm not going to say that I use rice water to starch my jeans at all. I'm not saying that by any means, but I understand that logic. So using a starch as a facial toner to tighten up face, I understand the logic. I'm picking up what you're putting down. But yeah, that's some, I understand that logic. All right, let's see. Anna Banana says, I realize this is a departure from your topic du jour. Yes. We've gone off the rails, and we've actually gone over time, but that's okay. We're having fun. But continuing on with Anna Banana's question, but if I have a 20 by 30 rectangle of established crabgrass lawn that I would like to garden next year, what method would you recommend for the prep? All right, so good question. So we have an established area where we want to grow. One of the best ways that you can do this to be not to use any harsh chemicals like your weed or your herbicides and so forth is honestly by taking cardboard. Take some cardboard, and I mean, because let's face it, we all, I don't know all, but Amazon is $1 billion corporation for a reason. We all get those little brown boxes in the mail. Take those boxes, break them down, lay them down flat on the surface area that you want to use, and then wet it down so that you get nice and tight compact area. Then I would even say you could go with like something like heavy, like a pond liner, if you have the means to be able to get it, because pond liners can be expensive, or maybe just some kind of heavy plastic or something like that to essentially to cover that surface area. Then take some rocks and just let it sit there. Now, well, you know what? As I'm saying that out loud, I'm wondering. You might not want to use the plastic. You know what? Delete what I just said. We're going to strike that one from the record. Just go with the heavy cardboard. Go with several layers of this cardboard and weigh it down with rocks. The reason why I say delete what I just said about the plastic is because putting that plastic in the equation can actually end up cooking your soil in the sun. And it could end up cooking those microbes that are already present in your soil. So we don't want to do that. We want those beneficial microbes and macroorganisms. So let's just go back to the original statement. And we take and place some cardboard down. And sorry, there's an airplane passing. 2 airplanes. All right. Just waiting for the airplanes to pass so you guys can hear me. But yeah, take several layers of that cardboard. Wet it down so you get a nice compact area, and weigh it down with some rocks or some bricks. And because of that lack of sun, it will naturally break down, and the organic matter that's going to come off that crabgrass is going to feed the soil too. And then you come back a couple of months later. So that's something I would say you would do now, getting ready for the next season. When you come back next season, it should be completely clear of all those plants that are in that space that you want to grow. Great question. And that's the way you can do it organically. Now, of course, there's quicker ways that you can do it, but it would involve the use of chemicals. But this would be a great organic way to be able to utilize that space. Great question, Anna Banana. Thank you. I'll take a sip of my coffee, my hibiscus tea here. And now, for those of you who came to the conversation for more talks on fertilizer, I have several videos on fertilizer. I think I'm going to do more of an in-depth video on YouTube when I can spend about 20-30 minutes just dedicated to fertilizers. Well, I'll give you more of this information. But in the meantime, if you want to find this information on your own, you can always, like I said before, you can always check this information out on your local ag extension website. It's there and it's available for you for free, especially if you're here in the United States. Also, the USDA.gov has a lot of this information and resources as well. So that's always available to you. All right, let's see. Amazing. Oh, Anna Banana says amazing. Thank you. And no chemicals. Well, no, let me just jump in here. It's not that there's no chemicals, because everything in our natural world is made up of chemicals. You and I, we're made up of chemicals. I just want to say that. It's no use of synthesized chemicals or harmful chemicals that can actually hurt your local ecosystem. So let's go with that one. But I know what you meant. I just had to say that though. But yeah, so this has been a great conversation on fertilizers. Like I said, there's much more we could talk about fertilizers. I mean, because we didn't even get to talk about, our micronutrients, right? Like our iron, our manganese, or what else? calcium and so forth. We didn't talk about any of that. We didn't talk about the difference between like a water-soluble fertilizer and a solid fertilizer. We didn't even get to really break down into how to use all those different composts and manures and so forth. There is a cornucopia of like rabbit holes that we can go down when we're talking about fertilizers. So in those instances, like I said before, guys, DM me, you know. I'm going to work on that long form video on the YouTube channel where I can start breaking this information down for you. But in the meantime, while I'm still working on that, feel free to ask me questions. You know, give me 2 or 3 days, because the unfortunate side of more and more people follow me is becoming harder to answer every single question. But you know I will get to you. But send me a DM, send me a comment, and give me a couple of days, and I will get back to you, and I'll help you out as best I can. But guys, it has been amazing speaking to you as always. If you have any further questions, definitely reach out to me. And this is something I want to say to you. May your soil not compact, and may your weeds pull easy. It's been amazing speaking with you. I will talk to you again real soon.